Okay, here we are live again. What's the date today? May what? 6th?
6th. Yeah.
Okay, we're May 6th live on Let's Talk. So before we begin today, I just wanted to make a quick shout out, thank you to everyone who's sent in questions, made comments, made suggestions, made complaints. It's all welcome, and we thank you all very much, all the Vaishnavas and all the Vaishnavis out there who are tuning into Let's Talk. All right, so we don't have a fixed diagram for what we're doing here in the sense of planning out everything, just a little bit what we want to begin with each day. So some things that we've already covered are undone. We haven't completed them, and we've gone on to something else. So it's that's the nature of everything being a little spontaneous. So the main focus on today is going to be Krsna West, and the reason being that I mentioned Krsna West, what's being talked about on the internet as Krsna West, and I said, well, I don't really know that much about it. We just talked a little bit about it. And so after that, we got quite a few questions from almost about a half a dozen people from different places in the world making comments about Krsna West. Most of them were, I guess you'd have to say they were kind of unfavorable. So, but this Krsna West, this general conception, what people are calling Krsna West, it has to be or is connected to the concept of time, place, and circumstance, how to preach in different cultures and everything like that. So, time, place, and circumstance for preaching, this is certainly not a new thing. And so we took the liberty to, Swami took the liberty to look up a few things that Srila Prabhupada had said in relation to time, place, and circumstance. So do you have those there, Goswami, now that you can read?
Yes, I do. There's two quotes. One is from Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th Canto, 1st chapter, 24th verse, and another quote from Srila Prabhupada in New Vrindavan in 1969 in a recorded conversation. Srila Prabhupada says in the purport of the Bhagavatam, sometimes we are criticized because although I am a sannyasi, I have taken part in the marriage ceremonies of my disciples. It must be explained, however, that since we have started a Krishna-conscious society, and since a human society must also have ideal marriages, to correctly establish an ideal society, we must take part in marrying some of its members, although we have taken to the path of renunciation. That was the purport to the fifth canto. And in a recorded conversation, again in New Vrindavan, 69, he says, and this marriage ceremony also, perhaps it is a new thing I have introduced, that I take part in the marriage ceremony of my disciples. End quote.
Yes, I remember both of those. They're actually quite historic statements. But those who may not know the whole surrounding picture, let me say a couple things in this regard. Certainly, marriage isn't anything new anywhere in the world, is it? You know, I mean, in every human culture, there's marriage, whether it's Hindu, Christian, Muslim, Jewish, whatever, Aboriginal even. I mean, so he's not talking about he's introduced marriages, and certainly marriage isn't any new thing in Gaudiya Vaishnavism either, or whether it's Sri Vaishnavism or Gaudiya Vaishnavism or the Madhvas. Marriage is an institution in human society. So he's not saying that he has introduced marriage amongst the followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. No, that's not what he's saying. But what he's referring to is that traditionally, particularly in the Vaishnava cultures of India, and specifically in the Gaudiya Vaishnava culture of the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, sannyasis do not perform the marriage function. They do not perform the yajna, the fire sacrifice, which is the ritual of bringing two people together in marriage in Vaishnavism. He's the first. He's the first sannyasi to do that. I mean, as we experienced in South India, a sannyasi even doing a fire sacrifice is criticized. Isn't that correct, Gary?
Yeah, near Agni, they're not supposed to touch fire.
Yes. In the Vedic concept of the sannyas order, the renounced order of life, so they're not to touch fire. How are they supposed to cook their food then?
They don't cook. Someone cooks for them.
Someone cooks for them. Yeah, very interesting. But the preaching movement is not about following all these tit-for-tat rules and regulations. It's about spreading the message of the Sankirtan movement and adopting whatever is favorable for that. So I believe they have another, Goswami, you have another verse 5 and 6 from the Varaha Astakam of Srila Prabhupada.
You want to go to that, or you were going to read what you got from Ramkishore, or no?
No. First read what you have there from the prayer written by Srila Prabhupada in 1959. Go ahead and read those two verses, and then we'll get back to the whole prayer later. It's verse 5 and 6, I believe.
Sure. Number 5. Lord Gauranga used many tricks just to engage the conditioned souls in devotional service. And you have also understood how to use all those tricks perfectly well. This is a offering to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta on his disappearance day. So he's talking about Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. And I'll read that again. I meant to say that. Lord Gauranga used many tricks just to engage the conditioned souls in devotional service. And you have also understood how to use all those tricks perfectly well. You understood time, place, and circumstance, and utilized everything as a strategy for preaching. Although observing your activities with their very eyes, those who are blind like owls and other creatures of the night could not see your true purpose.
So again, this is a glorification, two of the verses in that amongst those 8 verses, a glorification of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. And Prabhupada is pointing out that you are expert in delivering the message of Lord Chaitanya and creating many unique things. Now, is it not? Isn't that what's being said there?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm going to emphasize many unique things, many things. He's done many things. Now, if you reflect back to Srila Prabhupada, and he's saying, actually, I don't know if it was in that part you just read, but he's mentioned this marriage ceremony before. He actually says, this is the only thing that I have done that's unique and different. Everything else was done by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. What does that mean, everything else? Well, daily newspaper, magazines,
Rath Yatra,
outside of Jagannath Puri, radio shows.
Yeah.
Drove in a car,
modern conveyances, used the telegraph.
Book distribution.
Going out and selling the books, the Shastra on the street.
Prasadam distribution.
Prasadam distribution. Prasadam distribution's always going on in temples and things like that. But
that's true.
So that's not one of the unique things. Pretty much at the top of the list of the most unique contributions of Bhaktisiddhanta is he, in the words of Sridhara Maharaj, invented the sannyas ashram for the Gaudiyas. Yes.
I was just thinking the Magic Lantern show as well.
Yes, that was called the Magic Lantern Show. Now we have video live cast, broadcast, whatever going all over the world. back in the day of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's preaching, the slide projection machine, which was a very different thing with a burning oil lamp and a big 5x7 glass plate of something and a big box and a whole thing, and it was projected up on a screen, the original slideshow projection. What was it called again, Gary?
The Magic Lantern Show.
Magic Lantern Show.
Magic Lantern Show. From Magic Lantern Show to Matchless Gifts. And Srila Prabhupada is saying that he has only introduced one unique addition to this.
Can I ask a question about that, Maharaj?
Yeah, sure.
Did Bhaktisiddhanta second initiate any of his female disciples, or is because Prabhupada? I've heard you mention sometimes that.
Yes, he did. But that's a story within itself. Maybe we'll just stick to that one day. But no, yes, he did. But the difference is that he did not give the Brahma Gayatri, which devotees usually refer to as the first line of Gayatri, Om Bhur Bhuva Svaha, etc. That traditionally in India is not given to women, and so when Bhaktisiddhanta did give second initiation, he did not give that first line Brahma Gayatri to women. However, Srila Prabhupada did. That's a whole story how that evolved. So he never did mention that, but you're pointing this out that yes, that's a second thing that Srila Prabhupada did that's unique, a second addition to things that are necessary for widely spreading the Krishna consciousness movement, the Sankirtan movement.
Actually, the second initiation, the splitting of the initiation to Harinam and second, was also an innovation by Bhaktisiddhanta.
Yeah. So most of the innovations, most of the things that were developed, programs, let's call them, they were created by Bhaktisiddhanta. So there have been many. So for someone to come up with an idea is what we were saying yesterday, Krsna West, how to adjust. I had something here on my phone. I can't find it right now. I was reading it this morning. And Prabhupada is speaking with Allen Ginsberg. And they're speaking about prasadam. And it's kind of like, well, does it always have to be Indian? And the answer is a little elaborate, but basically Prabhupada is saying, no. Krishna says fruits, flowers, vegetables, all these things should be offered to him. So if you have a different way of preparing these things, a different taste, then according to the taste of the people, you can offer that to Krishna. According to, he's actually saying to Ginsberg, I think he's saying according to your taste.
Yeah, that's what he says. Take according to your taste, he says.
Take according to your taste.
Yeah.
So it isn't that we have to introduce Indian food. Oh, that's a whole other thing, too. What is Indian? I mean, most people around the world think a harmonium is Indian. It's not. It's German. Mm-hmm. The harmonium is a German instrument. It's not an Indian instrument. And people similarly think, oh, the sitar is Indian. No, it isn't. It's Persian.
Tabla
also Persian. I mean, India has been the melting pot of cultures. Even words that appear in the Mahabharata and other Puranas, particularly, I always speak of the word malecha. And everybody thinks that's a Sanskrit word, but if you look it up, you'll find out that the word malecha is not a Sanskrit word, it's a Sanskritized word. It's actually it's a Semitic word, which means the worshippers of Moloch, which is a deity of human sacrifice around the Mediterranean and in Israel during ancient times. But it's not actually a Sanskrit word. Neither is India. The word India is not. It's not even a Hindi word or a Persian word. It is completely an English word derived from the Greek indica. And so on and so forth. So, from the name of India right down to words and and things and foods and preparations. And I mean,
Saris.
sari is also not Indian. Actually, wherever you find the word sari written in the writings of the Goswamis and such in the English, actually, if you check the Sanskrit or the Bengali, it's not a sari.
Right.
These are when describing the gopis and these things. There's so many things. India's been and still is the melting pot of ideas, philosophies. Many devotees, not just devotees, but people in general, are surprised to know that the Mongolians ruled the north of India for over 250 years under the name of the Kushans. Or that there were Ethiopian emperors in Bengal just prior to the appearance of Mahaprabhu. And there are so many. India has been the center of attention for this world for a long time, and that's the melting pot of many ideas. So, Krishna consciousness spreading in the world, back to the point, Krsna West, it's a good idea. But then comes the detail. And I received, we received some comments about that. And I received this one comment about Krsna West, and it's on the negative side. And by Krsna West, it doesn't mean the idea of just, adjusting things so that things may spread more easily in the West. It's a criticism of the program which is going on in certain parts of the world today, called Krsna West. And so this person writing this complaint, I'll just kind of summarize some of the points he makes. It's a complaint. He's not satisfied. This Krsna West also includes, he says, such things as, and I guess he's raising the question like, what's the point? How does this facilitate the spreading of the Sankirtan movement in a Western culture? To him, these things which this person is going to state here seem rather useless. Well, what is the point? So let's see if there is a point in it. Maybe we'll discuss that a little bit. He says Krsna West means, he's mentioning, giving initiation from the Vyasasan wearing Bermuda shorts. I don't know. I've never seen that, I guess. Is that true or not? I don't know.
I don't know.
So, he said, but apparently, I know this person. He's not one to make story, talk lies. He says, and in such initiations, not giving tulsi neck beads to the newly initiated, or not giving the sacred thread to the men who were receiving second initiation, Gayatri initiation. So he mentioned these things as being part of Krsna West, and he doesn't feel that this is of any benefit. This does not ease the process of people to understand or not. He also makes the point, this person makes a point that in today's world, he says, multiculturalism is a norm, especially in cities or urban areas, and people in general, they don't have an issue with Vaishnava dress. And I think that's a very accurate point. I mean, if you go out in Oklahoma, and go out in the boonies somewhere in the Dakotas and the ranch lands and pop out at some truck stop in your dhoti, well, that might be a problem. But as he's mentioning New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, London, and these places, very multicultural, ethnic communities, and Vaishnava dress, including shaved head and sikha for the men, is not an issue. And I think he's right there.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I've seen here in Mexico that was the point. I mean, there were devotees. The devotee I did talk to about Krsna West. I said I met a devotee out here in Mexico. Well, I'd seen that same devotee 2 years ago distributing books in a shaved head and a sika and a dhoti. Well, I forgot to ask him, now that now you're out here in pants, shirt, and all that, and a baseball hat, has this increased the numbers of books? And I didn't ask. So, but my speculation is here in Mexico, no, it didn't increase it. In fact, it's probably the same, or it might possibly be less. But that there's some recognizable. Oh yeah, we're doing many more books. People are really a lot more interested. I don't think so. And I say that based on the culture here in Mexico. And it's kind of the Latino culture, I guess you want to call it. And based on my experience in Italy, or going around Rome a few years ago, dressed in a dhoti, get on a bus and people would stand up and give me their seat. Right. Because they recognized this kind of robish look, and I had a chadar and a dhoti and all that stuff, and they'd recognize it. I even went to the Vatican. Not the Vatican, where did I go? The Sistine Chapel. Yeah. And I had people, a lot of people coming up and talking to me and showing interest. So it depends. Japan would be another place where if you're dressed, and I guess if you just wearing a dhoti and you look like some Bengali businessman from the 1950s in Calcutta, well, maybe that's different. But if you have enough of the attire, like Goswami, you're wearing the chadar, if you've got the chadar, if you've got a robish looking look to your Vaishnava dress, it's acceptable.
Well, what I've looked on in Krishna, what I've seen with Krsna West, it seems that it's very extreme in the sense that they want to remove anything or everything that has anything like even a vestige of India. And their idea is that India is looked down upon. India is not in, but I'd beg to differ. I'd say that India is in.
Don't see that at all.
Well, I would have to say, well, then you're living in a time warp, because, if you go back 20 years and you told somebody I'm going to India, they would go, oh my God, what do you want to go there for? Now you say, oh, I'm going off to India. They go, oh God, you're so lucky, man. That's on my bucket list. I want to go to India. We know, I see that practically. I mean, those of you who may not know, I also have a kind of a Krsna West, way, way, way west program called the Surf Ashram, which is basically an ashram which is centered around, it's centered around Krishna, but everything around Krishna is water sport oriented. And we have 1,000 visitors a year there. We have tremendous influence into people's lives. And the people are just flocking to India on every angle, whether it's to buy something, to tour and see ancient places, the Taj Mahal or whatever, or to come to the Surf Ashram or hang out on the beaches of Goa. India's at the top of you go-to places before you die.
Right. Yeah. Well, nowadays, cultural identity is encouraged. And, in academia, the way people are taught in school and everything else. And if you got a problem with that, that's really discouraged and looked down on. It's like, you're a racist, you're whatever. You get labeled all kinds of things. So the whole abandonment of everything tied, this Krsna West is, look at the Buddhists.
The Buddhists and the Dalai Lama, they're not dressing in pants and shirt because they think it's going to be more acceptable to the people. They dress in their robes and people respect them.
Sure. They do.
Yeah.
So, years ago, someone said, well, I think the preachers have to go out and get PhDs. And certainly, there's no harm in devotees that can qualify and doing that, and Srila Prabhupada did encourage that to a certain degree. He had his Srut Damodar and Sadaputa and Madhav, and there were different devotees who got PhD degrees. But this was years and years later, and someone said that, well, people won't listen to us. But if we have those initials behind our name, if we have that, if we have that degree, then people will listen to us. And I disagreed with that. I said, well, there are lots of people with degrees behind their names, but they really have nothing to say. And I said, actually, if you have something to say worth hearing, the whole world will beat a path to your door. Mm-hmm. And the proof of that is Prabhupada. He didn't have a list of degrees behind his name, and scholars recognized his work right up to the present day. His contribution, he made it. He's in the Encyclopedia Britannica. He's made Hare Krishna household a household word all around the world, and he didn't do it with a degree. So, yes, degrees are nice. There are certain fields where if you want to speak heavily into the field of science, well, the people in science, they demand that you have some background, you have some certification there. Mm-hmm. But so Prabhupada started the BI, and he had some scientists and things like this. Being a Swami, being a sannyasi, is in itself, that's your certificate. Yeah. That's your certificate to speak about the Upanishads, the Vedas, the Puranas, the Bhagavad Gita, the spiritual culture of India, and all these things. That is your certificate. So, I'm beginning to see why, these two words, Krsna West, is raising eyebrows because, from some people's point of view, there's a lot of all external changes, throw this, that, and the other away, but it's like, what's next? I mean, my question is, what are the, okay, forget how you dress, forget what kind of hairdo you got, or a beard, no beard, whatever. What are the programs? What are the programs? And I look out there and I go, so far I don't see there are any programs. Right. I mean, in the world of technology and so many things could be done. It's like, where's your TV shows, or where's your YouTube channels, or what? Yeah,
what are you doing with it?
Yeah, where are your special ashrams? I mean, and here's the first thing I caught. It's like Vyasa-san and Bermuda shorts. Well, pick one of the two, but the two don't go together. If you want to sit down somewhere and sit in an easy chair by the pool and give a talk and play a ukulele and sing a bhajan and preach Bhagavad Gita, you'll get a lot of people. People. But I would almost say, don't defile the Vyasa-san by plopping yourself up there in a pair of shorts and a t-shirt or whatever. You take the Vyasa-san, go with whatever else goes along with the Vyasa-san. Mm-hmm. And who established that Vyasa-san? Well, maintain the standards of what else was involved with the Vyasa-san. And that was a particular dress, what is known as Vaishnava dress. Many years ago, I was invited in Hawaii. Someone called me up and said, Maharaj, please come out on the Saturday Harinam party. And I said, well, thank you very much for your invitation. I said, but you see, I've got these days I can't afford a razor, and I've grown a beard, and so I don't think that's nice. I'll have to decline your offer. He said, no, that's okay. Nobody cares. And I said, well, I beg to differ. If you want to go out on the ISKCON Harinam party, then you don't go out there with a big scraggly beard. That's misrepresentative of Srila Prabhupada and the work that he did. I said, I'm outside the movement. I'm not out there in the street representing the Sankirtan movement in that way. I have many alternative programs that I'm part of. But if you're going to go out there, then look the part. So if you're going to sit on the Vyasa-san, look the part. And the part isn't Bermuda shorts and a t-shirt and stuff like this. This
baseball cap.
So I can see a baseball hat. I can see why people could get upset. Everybody would get upset. So another thing, I don't know which one of you has it, but Priya Nana out there in California, she wrote something and she asked a question which leads into some, some nice topic and some positive statements about.
Yeah, I got the question here.
So you please read that.
Yeah. Thank you for doing these live talks, very enlivening. Krsna West came up in today's discussion, and as I understand, the members of the organization use clicker counters instead of tulsi malas for their japa meditation. What are your thoughts on this? Is it necessary to chant on beads, or is it simply an arbitrary practice? Can you please talk about the history and significance of the japa mala in the Gaudiya Vaiṣṇava tradition?
So she's speaking about these clickers, right? Those little stainless steel things with numbers and a little tink, and every time you click it down, it rolls a number.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I've heard that before, that along with, whatever else has been chucked out the window, a lot of the Krsna West community, I guess that's what you'd call it, without mentioning names, the Krsna West community, they chant their japa on a clicker. Is that right? Has anybody else heard that or seen that?
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Yeah. I haven't seen it.
Mm-hmm. So we looked up a couple things, tulsi beads. So first I'd like to say that, well, at least in my case, and I'm sure it holds true with many, many devotees, when we were initiated, Harinam initiation, we were given our japa mala by our Guru Maharaj. And in my particular case, that is Srila Prabhupada, etc., and Goswami also. So we receive our japa mala from him. If he would have given me a clicker, I would value that clicker above all things. If he'd have given me a prickly cactus to chant on, well, I'd value that above all things. So I think that's one thing we should bear in mind, that whatever our Guru has given us to chant on, well, the disciple should naturally value that above all material possessions. Now the Guru gives the clicker, not japa beads, so the disciples chant on a clicker. Yes, then the disciples chant on a clicker. But the question is, what about the chanting? Well, you go back 100 years or go back so many years, the clicker didn't exist. So, we did some research on that, right, Giri Maharaj?
Yeah.
And although in Jaiva Dharma and in Gaudiya Sampradaya and in also other Sampradayas, etc., particularly in Vrindavan, the most desired physical object to wrap your fingers around while chanting and counting beads is a tulsi mala. Is that correct?
Yeah.
It's so popular that there must be a half a dozen or more bead shops in Vrindavan and the same down in Mayapur and Navadvip that just sell japa malas made of tulsi and neem.
Mm-hmm.
That's correct.
Yeah.
However, that's what's in vogue. That's what's in vogue in most of the sampradayas. That's what's in vogue in Vrindavan. That's what's in vogue in our sampradaya. However, if you go and look at the biggest part of the picture, you'll see that there are many things even recommended in Shastra that you can chant on,
right,
including your fingers. Mm-hmm. That we have references that Mahaprabhu, when he traveled in South India, he carried a water pot in one hand and chanted japa, keeping count on his fingers.
It says, actually, I looked at that verse, it's in the Madhya Leela. I think Sarvabhauma is saying to him, he's goading Mahaprabhu to take a servant with him, because he said, you're going to be using both your hands, one for counting japa and the other one to keep count of how many rounds you're chanting. So he says, Dui Hasta, you're using both hands to chant. Mm-hmm. So someone has to carry your kamandalu.
And there's another reference, I believe you told me about it at some point, that Mahaprabhu had a string with knots in it.
Yes. Rupa Goswami in his Pratama Chaitanyashtakam prayers, on the 5th verse, he mentions when Mahaprabhu would dance in Kirtan, then the It's a sutra, means a piece of string with knots in it. He would keep it in his waistband, and it would jingle. It would move around as he danced. So that was for counting japa.
So Mahaprabhu himself chanting on his fingers, chanting on a knotted piece of cloth or string. I think there was a reference also to either Gaurkishore or...
Yeah. Gaurkishore sometimes chanted on beads or sometimes on a piece of knotted cloth.
A knotted cloth. And where he picked up that cloth is probably somewhere on the banks of the Ganges. He picked up some cloth, tie it in knots and chant on it. So the main thing is chanting the holy name. What you chant on, be it your fingers, a piece of cloth, a piece of tulsi beads, these are all right. There are many choices out there. In fact, we found a list. And do you have that list handy, Gary?
It's in Hari Bhakti Vilas. It's in the 17th Vilas. Sanatana Goswami, first of all, he speaks mostly on Tulsi and Amalaki, these two in particular.
Amalaki.
Dry Amalaki, he says. But then he quotes
Gautami
Atam.
Amla.
Yeah.
Amalaki is different.
No, Amalaki, Amla, same thing.
Amla,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. So then he quotes the Gautamiya Tantra, which says Amalaki or Tulsi. Then he quotes the Agni Purana, which says beads of gold or conch shell or coral. Shiva Purana he quotes, which is chanting on fingers, coral, silver, gold, kusha grass knots, crystal, and padma, lotus.
Crystal means spatik.
Yeah, and lotus seeds as well.
Lotus seeds.
He gives a big list.
Other than the gold, I mean, I have seen gold mala. I've seen a gold mala embedded with diamonds. One Hindu friend of mine in Dubai had a mala, gold beads, and each one embedded with many diamonds. I've seen silver japa malas before, but usually what you can see a lot of is lotus seed malas, spatika. Was Rudraksha mentioned at all?
Yeah, Rudraksha and Bhadraksha. That's mentioned both as well.
Rudraksha. So there are many, many things, and most of these things are auspicious or considered pure and whatnot. But the preferred, as you read, was Tulsi and Amalaki.
Amalaki. Yeah,
and above the two, it is Tulsi that has number one position, most desirable for chanting. So what makes any of these things desirable for chanting is, well, several things. One is their availability, their purity, and their innate, inherent spiritual connection. So I laugh about this clicker, and, because when I was, I was about 18, I got a part-time job helping inventory 7-Eleven stores. I lasted 2 days and I quit. But we had to go to each shelf and there'd be packs of powdered milk, and you'd have to go and you'd count them with your fingers, but you'd tick, 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 you had that same clicker in your hand. And you'd click all these things, and then you'd look out and you'd go 250 packs or whatever it was, and the guy would write it down. You'd set it to 0 and go to the next item. It was just so you could keep track. So it's a great way to keep track, but it's not an auspicious. The clicker is not an auspicious thing.
Right.
And I do remember years and years ago when one of the acharyas in Mayapur was, some people said he's addicted to chanting on his clicker, and there was a whole resolution resolved that he has to chant on Tulsi. So he glued a Tulsi bead on the top of his clicker. Gotcha.
I actually saw a clicker recently when I went to see a yagya in Mysore, and they were doing 1,008 Narasingha mantras, and there was one young brahmachari, he had a clicker, and he was using the clicker in order to figure out how many 1,008 was, as he was the one that was counting all the... So now it's moved to the other sampradayas now.
So, a lot of discussion, clicker, no clicker, all this kind of stuff. It's so disappointing. Someone said to me, wrote an email and said, it's so disappointing, it's hard to, it's painful, he was saying, to look at the Hare Krishna movement today when the, main concerns of debate are clicker, no clicker, women guru, no guru, flat earth, and things that really don't matter one way or the other, and the real important issues of proper siddhanta and proper behavior and all these things are completely no interest. No interest. Yeah.
Could it be said, Guru Maharaj, that when we talk about society consciousness, it isn't just about our society being the greatest. Society consciousness couldn't it also refer to being very conscious of social issues more than the siddhanta?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, you've heard me say it many times. We have a small mission, and and one of the reasons is, although we did even attempt it to a certain extent, we don't have a social aspect in any of our temples or in any of our ashrams and in our mission in general. I mean, it's just all about chant Hare Krishna, do your devotional service. I think about Govindaji Gardens. You know, there in India, we have a beautiful library, and at one end of the library, there's comfortable sitting chairs and a sofa and all this, but nobody's ever sitting in them because there's no time. Nobody has any time to sit around. There's no time to sit around and talk. There's no social life. And for many people, I think particularly for young people, social life is very, very important. And not to minimize, but I have to say, I think it's very important for the ladies section also, that social life. And for children, of course. And our mission has never provided very much of a social event, a social environment. Yeah. And so it's mainly there are a few of us, but we're hardcore. We're hardcore, yeah. So So social environment is important in human society, and any institution is going to provide that to some extent. So yes, we do. But if that becomes the whole thing, I mean, like how many times I've been back in the day at a Sunday feast program in L.A. there on Watsika Boulevard or something, and there's more people standing outside waiting for the class to end and then come inside for prasada. They're just standing outside talking, and then when the class is over, come in and sit down and take prasada. I remember when we had our center in Church Street in San Francisco, we made it a standard that the class was going to be 2.5 hours. That was standard. Class, Sunday, was 2.5 hours. And people complained. Because they had to wait too long for the prasada. And then we just said, and not only that, if you're not coming to the class, you can't take prasada. So, the Hare Krishna movement, if you just want to eat, well, go to Govinda's, And you can have some nice prasadam at Govinda's restaurant. You don't have to listen to anything or whatever. But if you're coming to the temple, you shouldn't be coming just to eat, just to socialize, And one of the worst social events I've ever been to in the Hare Krishna movement is Ratha Yatra. It's like, oh my God. It's just one huge, well, not everywhere, don't get me wrong, but I've been to some that were just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
A nightmare of yappity, 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 yappity. What? Like, oh, we're all getting together, haven't seen you in a long time, blah, 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 blah. I mean, it's just social events. So, and it's really bad in Vrindavan, I have to say. In Vrindavan at Krishna Balaram Temple, I mean, it's embarrassing. It's such a social place. It's just a big social event. In fact, in most evenings, you'll find more people in the restaurant during evening artik than you will in the kirtan.
Yeah. That's a whole topic in itself about the restaurants, what Prabhupada actually wanted.
Oh yeah, but let me just throw it in now before we get back to it.
Sure.
The Hare Krishna restaurants, including the restaurant in Vrindavan, were not meant for devotees. Prabhupada did not allow the devotees to go eat in the restaurant, even in Vrindavan. The restaurants for people from outside and from the world and the towns and the cities around the world, the first Govindas in Hawaii and such, and the restaurant in Vrindavan at the Krishna Balaram Temple, life members only or paying guests. Those are the only people who would eat in the restaurant. And why would you want to eat in a restaurant when you can go to the Prasadam Hall and take Krishna Balaram Prasadam? Now the restaurant, and
only devotees.
And the temple's being designed in Mayapur with a pizza parlor. Woo, we're going to have pizza, we're going to have all this stuff. So you can see that the society aspect isn't just about our society, it's about this social environment. And it gets out of control. It gets totally out of control. So it's up to the leaders and the preachers to keep a handle on it. Provide some social environment, because it's part of being human, but that should not be the main focus, social environment. I had a thought the other day. I'm going to be speaking with one of the GBCs maybe later today via Skype, and I'm going to suggest that why don't you start some sort of a program, figure it out, called Vaishnavas Without Borders. It's kind of like Vaishnavas Without a Society. Just you can be in a society, everyone's in there, but create something, and maybe through that some exchange of ideas, maybe increase a little harmony and everything. Bottom line, I think it's hopeless. I don't think it'll work. But you have doctors beyond borders. You have all these things. So Vaishnavas beyond borders.
Right.
But we'll see. So anyway, that was very interesting about how to chant and what to chant on, and everything in that regard. I think so. Let me mention something that probably a lot of people don't know. But when Srila Prabhupada came to the Western world, came to New York, when we finally got around to it, he recommended the devotees chant 64 rounds a day. Why do you think that is, Gary?
That was the standard his Guru Maharaj said. That was the standard of Mahaprabhu as well. 1 lakh.
1 lakh. 64 rounds a day. About how much time does that take?
8 hours.
8, 9 hours, yeah.
8, 9, it can take more. It can even take more.
Yeah, easy.
8, 9 hours. And, but then, that, of course, that was an impossibility for any number of reasons. But, time being probably the most significant reason. And, so then what happened? He reduced and told you, chant 32 rounds, which is half of 64, right? And that also proved to not be possible. And then His Divine Grace said 16 rounds, and that was a 2-hour daily task, and given a tight regulation, well, that stuck. That became the standard. Yet there are instances where even that 16 rounds was, I guess I have to say, reduced or adjusted according to circumstances. One that I know of was in a letter to, I forget who it was to, who was tending the cows.
Paramananda, yeah.
Paramananda.
Gita Nagari.
I don't think he was at Gita Nagari at the time. I don't think
he was at New Vrindavan then.
Right, yeah. This is before Gita Nagari was invented, but and this, that, and the other, according to his service, Srila Prabhupada told him that because of his service he could chant 4 rounds. And another instance I know of is in South Africa, when I was preaching there with Pushta Krishna Swami. At one point, we didn't even have our own anything. At one point, we didn't even have a car, but we were just staying in the homes of people and everything like this. And Pushta Krishna was preaching from morning till night, you would say. to the people where he was staying and everything, and added to all the other responsibilities of collecting and everything. He was not able to keep up his 16 rounds, and Srila Prabhupada wrote him and told him to continue the preaching strongly, but to try to put aside at least a half hour to chant 4 rounds a day. And but that's not Prabhupada's invention. That's something that goes all the way back to, again, Bhaktisiddhanta. And I didn't copy it, but I ran across it yesterday when going through the folio, our Acharya folio, and different books and things about chanting japa and what one should chant japa on. I also came upon, I think it was a purport in Chaitanya Bhagavat by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, and the 64 rounds, the 1 lakh names was given as Mahaprabhu's preference. Mm-hmm. And then the 4 rounds was also mentioned, and it's called a grunth or something. I
a grantha, yeah.
It's called a grantha, or it's called
grantha.
A
grantha, yeah.
A grantha, the word grantha, yeah. 4 rounds. So it's a, and that accompanies them, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, but don't let the beads starve. Mm. You see? And Sridhar Maharaj was asked, how many rounds was one pledged to chant at the time of initiation during the time of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta? And the answer was quite surprising. The answer was none. There were no such pledges. Mm-hmm. But everyone was encouraged to chant 64 rounds a day, and a minimum of 4 rounds a day. And then he said, our Guru Maharaj put emphasis on service. Bhaktisiddhanta so there was no, at the time of initiation, pledging to chant any particular number of rounds, but the emphasis was put on service. And this makes me remember another incident in Chaitanya Saraswat Math, when let me see the question. How did it go? They were asked, the devotees in the mutt, how many rounds is it necessary for them to chant? Now get ready. He said, who's living in the mutt means the ashram and temple. It's not necessary for them to chant any rounds. And everybody was like, what? He said, they are living with Krishna. And they are fully engaged 24 hours a day in Krishna's service. So it is not, he was saying that and if they don't chant, they're going to be they're going to fall down. So this is pretty shocking. And then someone said, well, what about devotees that live outside the ashram? He said, they must chant 64 rounds a day.
They don't have any service.
Because they have no service. They're not living with Krishna. They're out in the world with family, with children, with job. They're surrounded by distraction and no chance.
That's going to get some questions today.
What?
That will get some questions today.
All right, that's what we want. Wake up, people, If you're out there in the world, chant 64 rounds, and if you're in the temple, you don't have to chant any. No, that's not what we're saying. But he's making a point, just like the point, Pundarik Vijayanidhi would not go to the Ganges River during the daytime because he could not tolerate to see the most holy Ganges touched by people's feet, people washing their hair, people washing their bodies, people washing their clothes in the sacred Ganges, children jumping and playing in the Ganges. He had such a high regard for the Ganges that he would not go there in the daytime because he could not tolerate seeing all these ways in which Mother Ganges was dealt with. So he would go in the night. And so that example is there not to be followed, that no one should bathe, no one should do this, no one should do that in the Ganges. No, but that example of Pundarik Vijayanidhi is there to remind us that whatever you do in the Ganges, do it with great reverence. Because the Ganges is a spiritual personality, Mother Ganga, etc., etc. So these examples, these statements. But Prabhupada has also made the statement, if you don't chant 16 rounds a day, you're not a human being.
It sort of reminds me of that statement Prabhupada said. He said, all the men should be brahmachari, all the women should be married.
Yeah, so how do you get all in all and get anything there? How do you get all men brahmachari and all women married? There's a problem there.
Yeah.
One time in Los Angeles, Prabhupada is saying about eating filling the stomach when eating. And one devotee, this is way back in early 70s or late 60s, one devotee says, but Prabhupada, you said in New York some previously that we should take prasadam up to the neck. So Prabhupada said, yes, you listened to me then, listen to me now. Krishna consciousness now, rules and regulations later. So, but what happens? What happens? I've experienced this dealing with some of our God brothers, or devotees in the Hare Krishna movement, particularly my God brothers, that in their very neophyte stage, they heard Srila Prabhupada say something, or they saw a particular thing. And it is just stuck with them. There is no adjusting, absolute, relative statement, this, that, time, place, circumstance. No. Prabhupada said. And it's just, that's it. There's no other way to look at it. That's it. And I think that's natural. And it's just like childhood. Things happen when we're children and we're stuck with it. We live with it, the rest of our life. It may be a good experience, it may be a bad experience, or it just may be an experience. So in a similar way, the neophyte may hear something from the guru, and it just sticks, and it sticks in the way the neophyte understood it at the time. But later, when one is, say, got 30, 40, 50 years of Krishna consciousness practice in their experience and all the experiences that come with it. And then at that point, if they heard the same thing, it might stick very, very differently. It might mean something very, very different. So it's just the nature of the world, the nature of being human, and such. However, we should not remain neophyte. We all begin, and certainly we should all continue to think of ourselves as neophyte. We should never think of ourselves as advanced. But the fact is, we shouldn't keep some of those original neophyte mentalities and these things. I mean, I remember when the first week I was in the temple in Los Angeles, I had come from this previous group, ashram, of devotees, at least we were trying to be devotees of Krishna in Hawaii. It was known as the KYC, the Krishna Yoga Community. And in the Krishna Yoga Community, we would fill up gallon jugs of water every day in the morning, and we would offer them to our deity of Krishna. And wherever you went, whatever you're doing, you're working in the garden, or you're going out chanting in Waikiki, you would take these jugs of water. And so we offered all the water that we drank. So when I joined Srila Prabhupada's mission, ISKCON, and I was in Los Angeles on the third or fourth day or something, this new person there, I saw some devotees drinking out of a tap. A tap on the side of the building, turn the tap, a garden hose. They were drinking water, and I thought, oh my God, they're drinking water without offering it, And I was like, God, I don't want to be a rat or anything, I don't want to be a snitch, but I thought, I know, this doesn't seem right, So I went to Karandar's office and I said, well, I don't want to be a tattletale and everything, but I saw devotees drinking water without offering it. He was like, okay, Bhakti Jack.
You didn't Sri Vishnu it.
Then he told me about Sri Vishnu, Sri Vishnu, Sri Vishnu. And I don't think that's popular anymore. Sri Vishnu, Sri Vishnu, Sri Vishnu. But it turns out Prabhupada didn't invent that. He didn't start that. That was started by a devotee. I think his name was not Swarup or something. One of the old
Sri Vallabha?
Huh?
Sri Vallabha?
No, Sri Vallabha.
No.
He's much later. One of the early devotees from 26 Second Avenue. Somehow it got going. Somebody, hey, if you're out there listening, do some research. Who started Sri Vishnu, Sri Vishnu, Sri Vishnu, and then drink the water or eat the apple or whatever it was? You see. It wasn't a bad thing. It's to remember Krishna. Krishna is a taste of water. Always remember Krishna. But that was some fanaticism, of the neophyte. Similarly, that same year, I went to Kurandar and I said, I wanted to get together this is before traveling Sankirtan, before book distribution started, 1970. I said, I'd like to get together a team like myself and 3 other devotees, and we'll have a van, and we'll travel all the temples, one after the other in the United States, and we'll do Maha cleanups on the kitchen. And he looked at me like, I don't know if this kid's going to make it, Traveling kitchen cleaning. But the reason was that was the biggest service there was in the temple. I mean, that was an important service. It was kitchen religion, cleaning the temple. Cleaning the kitchen every night. Maha cleanups once a week in the kitchen. Take the stoves apart, clean up every little thing. And I had this little cleaning kit with brushes, and screwdrivers, and all this stuff. And I thought, okay, yeah, that's what I'll do. I'll expand the kitchen cleaning. So, whatever. There are many thoughts that we have. They may be inspired by our enthusiasm and then limited by our experience. There may be laudable at a point in the beginning, but then we should adopt and grow into a more mature understanding of what is necessary, what is the meaning of the order of the spiritual master, and more importantly, how to carry out the order of the spiritual master. We cannot just, although we may think of ourselves as neophytes, we cannot remain neophyte and actually be an asset to the mission of our spiritual master. So back to the beginning of this talk, and then we'll wrap it up. I think the idea of Krsna West is parampara in the sense that we need to adjust things and make necessary adaptations according to time, place, and circumstance to make it easy for people to come to Krishna consciousness. But we should not compromise the philosophy. That's foremost. And we should really consider the changes. Are they necessary? Is it an addition? Is it an infringement on the tradition? It's something that should be done with great caution and not simply rushed into. So, any other comments here today? We'll wrap it up. One suggestion was our talks are too long. Who the heck has an hour and a half to listen every day to a couple old guys shooting out their mouth? Right. So I think what we're also going to do here is we're going to excerpt sections from each of these talks and put them out there as little snippets next to the hour plus long talks. And this will give devotees that don't have much time just to hear little pieces and whatnot. So, anything else to say today, gentlemen?
No,
not without it really extending the conversation. So.
Well, you know me, I'm game. But one thing I did want to mention too. I mentioned that we were going to contact Garuda, who is the webmaster at As It Was, and I did yesterday. And I talked with Garuda, and he's very enthusiastic to come on one of these mornings and talk with us about the book changes. A very important topic for many people in the world today and for generations in the future to work this out. So I was very surprised to hear some things from him. But he said he didn't want to come on right away. He was in the middle of concluding some research and some things. He's deeply involved in this issue, and but he was game for coming on. And, what?
His comments on controversy were very refreshing. You know?
Yeah. So let's not leak any of that. Let's not be leakers. Let's not let any of that out. Let's let him come on when he's ready. Probably it's not going to be for a couple more weeks. But in the meantime, he may join us here. Garuda is an amazing devotee. He's achieved things in the academic world, which I am absolutely positive Srila Prabhupada will be so pleased with. And as in the course of it, he's written many articles. I mentioned the other day, he's a regular guest speaker at the Smithsonian Institute. This is one of the most prestigious intellectual institutions in the United States and in the world. He has written, it's some time back, but he has written an article on Bhagavad Gita and Ashtanga Yoga. And we were reading that article yesterday, and it's a really, really nice article. So I'm going to speak to him maybe later today or tomorrow, and invite him to come and speak with us about exactly what is this article he wrote and what's in it, and let him kind of give a talk on Bhagavad Gita and Ashtanga Yoga. And I think we're all going to find that very, very interesting. So.
Yep.
Super. But eventually we will get him on about the book changes. Yes, controversy is...
Welcome, he said.
Yeah, welcome, and it's certainly alive in the world, so, that'd be great. All right, so let's wrap it up for now, and thank everyone who's out there watching and who may tune in later and watch this video. This video will be entitled on YouTube, Krsna West. All right? Let's leave it at that. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.